Lowering your car is a popular modification to improve the look of your car by filling out the wheel wells, in addition to improving handling by lowering the center of gravity. But lowering does come with its share of drawbacks. Here are 7 things to consider before lowering your car. Number 1. Ride quality will suffer. Lowering your car requires using stiffer springs to keep the tires from hitting the frame when going over bumps, but unfortunately, stiffer springs make for a stiffer ride. It's also possible that the damping rate of your shocks won't match the newer stiff springs, which will compromise handling. So either your car will bounce after hitting a bump, since the springs are now under-damped, or you'll need to install shocks with a higher damping rate, which will only contribute to a stiffer ride. Number 2. The tires are at risk of rubbing. Even after you have installed the stiffer springs and the correct shocks, it's still possible for the tires to rub on the fenders or suspension components. So you will need to take this into account when choosing the tires and wheels that you're going to be installing, so that way you can avoid rubbing. You're also probably going to need to roll your fenders to remove any sharp edges. Number 3. Camber will change. The suspension is designed around the car being at the stock ride height. When you lower the car, this will affect the suspension geometry and give the car negative camber. While some negative camber will help to improve handling in the corners, your ability to brake and accelerate will be subsequently compromised. This is because the tire is at an angle with the ground, which decreases the contact patch. The tires will also wear down quicker and unevenly with negative camber. So you can either leave the natural camber from lowering the car and accept the penalties in braking, acceleration, and tire wear, or you can correct for negative camber by purchasing parts that allow for changing the suspension geometry, which is an added expense. Number 4. The CV axles will be affected. CV axles are designed to allow the suspension to move up and down, but normally return to being perpendicular to the axis of the wheel. Lowering the car will change the axis of the axles, which can introduce odd behaviors to the suspension and risk breaking the axles. So just another thing to consider, that you might have to be replacing CV axles more often. Number 5. Driving will require additional concentration. After lowering a car, the exhaust, oil pan, bumpers, CV axles, and other important components are now closer to the ground. This means that speed bumps, driveways, debris in the road, whatever else, now have a higher probability of damaging your car if you're not aware of it and drive over those. So this requires constant focus to be aware that your car doesn't have the clearance that it once used to. Number 6. Everything will be more difficult to reach. Driving-related activities are designed around regular cars and SUVs. This means that anything you would do in your car, like visiting the ATM or going to the drive-thru, is designed to cater to taller vehicles. Lowering your car will make running errands in your car more difficult, so just something to consider before lowering. Number 7. Working on your car may be more difficult now. When I first started racing, I drove down to a race, and at the race as I was changing over my tires, I decided I'll just lower the car a little bit, see if I can get a bit more of an edge. After doing so, I was trying to lower the car off the jack, and it was at this point I realized my jack was now trapped underneath the jacking point. So it's just something to consider. You will at least need a low profile jack once you lower your car to fit underneath. And the use of ramps will be more difficult, because even if the bumper will clear the ramps, there won't be much room underneath the car if you're resting on ramps. So just plan ahead, make sure you have the right tools to get underneath of your car safely and with enough room to work. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and maybe it gave you something to think about before lowering your car. So let me know what you think in the comments below, how I did, and if there's anything you would add before lowering your car. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.
See you again.